Okay, we're back, and I want to give you guys uh, a quick step through of how we're going to approach subdividing this. Because the naive thing to do is to go in and just subdivide, which is how we would proceed with just about anything. But you can see that we lose a lot of, it introduces a lot of problems actually, least of which is losing volume. The worst problem is the subdivision interpolation between our edge loops, which are pretty sparse, right? So we naturally or kind of intentionally leave them, the edge loops far apart so that we don't have undue amounts of polygons when we subdivide. But we don't like to have all the things we spent some time introducing, these very deliberate angles being smoothed out, right? So first, let's crease our stump. And we're going to crease this kind of the traditional way with a visibility selection and then a crease. If we crease on angle, we're going to start getting creases on all of this stuff, which is not really what we want. We just want to keep this hard throughout our subdivisions. I'm just going to turn on double-sided for this. And now we're going to just do a little selection of the base, and that's what it looks like. Not rocket science, we've done this before. And so now we're going to go down to our divide menu and look at our crease settings. Crease level, again, I'll put it to be something like 4. And crease tolerance in degrees, we want to put that all the way up to 180. Otherwise, it will crease things that aren't that are less than 180 degrees and start to increase internal edges. Okay, so we're okay. That's creased on the bottom. And now if I just do a quick divide, you can see that we still have our nice stump on the bottom, which is what we want, but we don't want the rest of the smoothing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn off this setting, which is Smooth Subdivide Modifier. And this is going to give us internal subdivisions on each of these polygons, but it will not give us kind of the Catmull-Clark subdivision surface that we usually expect. Okay, so you can see that in a few of these areas where they're non-planar, you can start to see some forms pop out in the middle. And two subdivisions like this, and then if we turn it on, you can see that we've maintained a lot of the angles that we have up here, right, which is great. And actually we've maintained a lot of the cross-section as well through the fingers, which we know that the fingers aren't perfectly round. They often in some respects are more rectangular. So this gives us a pretty good setup for continuing and refining this with our different brush techniques. Of course, a lot of this area in the hand, we don't want it to be angular and square, so we'll have to eventually go in and just work through that, but that's going to fall out naturally with our general refinement, so we're not worried about that. But really, we should be quite happy that we have some of these angles left preserved. And before we go too far, you can just go down and confirm for yourself that any big kind of changes in planes from here will respect kind of the angles. Okay. So that's that for kind of setting this up, and pretty straightforward. I'm just going to see how much more we should do. We're kind of I'm at 48,000 polys. This is going to be probably a 6 subdivision model, and to just test my resolution, I'm going to go with the clay brush and just see when I start to get artifacts sculpting, and I get a lot of artifacts already right there. So edges of polygons, so I'm going to probably subdivide one more time. I just really like to have my my layers at the top level when I start working. So this is now kind of a still less than 1 million polygons, and we have pretty good resolution, so that's workable. because I'm going to get in later on in the sculpt and get some finer details in, and time permitting, we'll actually go in and do some of the really fine stuff. Okay, so that's going to set us up for the start of our sculpt. And from here, we're just going to put a refinement layer in. It'll be something like refine. Call it what you will, not important. But this is just going to capture our edits. And from here, we're just going to go in and start to sculpt. I'm going to tell you that the model for this, if you haven't already discovered it in other videos, is going to be yourself. So all of your reference for the pose and the gesture of the hand is going to come from your other hand, right? And so you want to make sure that whatever hand this is is the opposite hand of what you use with your Wacom tablet. And right now this is actually a left hand, so I need to turn this into a right hand in order to proceed, because I'm going to be using my right hand as my reference, because there's nothing better than having 3D reference right in front of you, which is why I say everybody should be good at hands, because we can look at them right in front of us. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute with my my hand reversed. Okay, welcome back. You can see I now have a right hand as promised. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to block in some of the landmarks that we need to kind of respect as we go through this process of refining the hand. And then once I get a few landmarks in, I'm going to actually show you guys how to approach transposing the fingers, because transpose is going to be our big tool for this exercise, at least to get the digits in place. And you guys will quickly become friends with transpose, because you have to be when you're doing hands. Otherwise, you're totally lost. Okay, so I'm just really going to block in kind of the hypothenar eminence, which is a anatomical term for kind of the mass on the pinky side of the hand. And then I'm also going to just refine a little bit the thenar eminence, which is on the thumb side, just to get this starting to look a little more naturalistic. At least to take some of our hard edges off. Okay, and then as I kind of get around here, this is kind of the magic area on the thumb, where things go from soft to hard, right? And this is going to be kind of the rule for everything that we do with the hand, is we have to really understand where the bone is, which areas are bony, like right back here, and going forward, all this is going to be bone, and what is going to be soft, and all the muscular forms going in through here are going to be soft, right? Likewise, when we get down to the fingers and not the fingers as opposed to the thumb, we have to really find out where the edges of our bone on kind of the dorsal surface and where finger kind of fat pads are on the palmar surface, right? Because those are going to create a plane change from back to front, and we have to be aware of kind of how those align themselves, and just kind of treat them sculpturally as two distinct areas. Okay, so really I'm just kind of showing you a quick block-in of things that we already do. You'll see more of this in the time-lapse video, but I really just want to get some of the flow going between the thumb and the hand, some of the major forms, like this first dorsal interosseous. Get some of the knuckles kind of protruding. And then I'm just going to do a little transpose demonstration for you. It's easy to over-define the knuckles especially when, say, fingers are straight, because obviously knuckles are kind of not popping out when fingers are straight. You only really see them when the fingers bend. So I'm just blocking without kind of regard to final appearance. I just want to know where they are so I can appreciate the proportions a little better than just on my straight base mesh. Okay, and then kind of as we look around the hand, around the palm, some good landmarks for us are actually the wrinkles, kind of the characteristic wrinkles of the hand, right? Because these are going to be actually bend points for a lot of the underneath the knuckles, right? So if we shoot a ray through here, right, through this big fat pad, or this big kind of finger pad, we're going to hit the rotation point of the knuckle. It's behind all of these, right? So as the fingers rotate down, you're getting all sorts of soft form modification in these pads, right? Especially as we go, pay attention to this first pad on the digits and the kind of characteristic depression in between that and the big knuckle pads. Right, because all these things kind of add up as kind of characteristic forms. Okay, so I'm just going to block this in a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you guys the benefits of having this low subdivision level, right? Because if I say I went into the pinky and just grabbed this and made this really long, step back up, you can see that my little pad is distributed its way all the way back up. So we'll be able to use this technique to our advantage as we start to refine our mesh and see proportional problems with the digits. And again, it's invaluable to have this kind of low-level representation. Okay, so let's see, what else do we have? I think I will probably just take this from here and get into a little bit more transpose. I'm going to have to go in and adjust the proportions on the finger because this top division is too high, right? So this is actually the bend in the knuckle pad, or the bend in this top digit, which should be here, but it's actually sitting way up there. So I'm just going to do that at level 1 right now. Pull this down. I'm just going to flare this out so it kind of makes sense. And again, the pads on the front don't quite necessarily align themselves with the pads on the back, or with the contour line going around in the back. So sometimes there's a little bit of an angle front to back, as we've already seen with the fingers. Okay, so let me just step up. Thumb is going to require a little bit of work to get the proportions in place, and it always does. I think it's probably a little bit too long right now. I'll do a double check on it in a little bit. Just start to sculpt some of this in. At least for a block, that's not going to do the job. That's way too much. Quickly pull this off. And I'll revisit this in the time lapse to spare you guys the tedium, but I will just block in some idea of the wrinkles on the back and just the planes there. Okay, so it's something. A little bit more of this coming across. And now I just want to show you guys a couple transpose techniques. It's going to kill me if I don't do something about this, though. maybe a little better. Okay, so I'm going to put the this little transpose on a new layer, and I'm going to just call it bend. You can keep it on your base edits layer if you want, but it sometimes is useful just to have your rotations on a different layer, so you can turn them on off. So really what we want to do is I just want to show you guys how to take advantage of multiple subdivisions to get your masks to work correctly, because we don't really have enough subdivision and enough geometry here to do a proper rotation with transpose on any of these digits. Only when we really get to level 2 or maybe level 3 can we actually rotate these effectively with the transpose mask. And I'll just show you what I mean by that. So really I'm just going to have for my pose, it's going to be a slightly more extreme in these last 2 digits. The pinky is going to be almost down at 90 degrees versus the metacarpal. And so I'm going to do a little transpose mask down to here, and you can see hopefully that we wouldn't have the same ability to get this kind of fine mask if we were just using a lower subdivision. So this is perfectly valid, and now I'll probably go and turn perspective off just to make sure there's no distortion as I look at my hand sideways on. You really want to assess the rotation point of the joints because this is going to be critical, and you really have to kind of use your X-ray vision to work this out. And you can do it like this, and you can see we're getting a pretty sharp knuckle, and that's good. You can do something else, which I often sometimes find useful, which is move your rotation point in further. It will actually give your knuckle a little pop to it and give it a little extra protrusion. Sometimes that's helpful, although mostly for the lower digits. So I'm just going to bend this one where I think the rotation point would be, and down, and literally right now I'm looking at my right hand in side view to just get the right amount of articulation. And this is going down like this, and then we're going to have to mask a little higher up and hit this second knuckle. And again, working almost purely in profile. And if you look at that, you can see that if I bend it extreme, it's getting kind of soft through there. I might actually step up one more subdivision to rotate this guy. And I'll just, careful with that, place my little joint and put the rotation down. And it's going to be about a little short of 90 degrees, so it's going to be about 80 degrees. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the last digit, the last phalanx, and down to about half of what our angle is here, right? That's kind of the golden rule to capture a believable gesture. Okay, so that's okay. What we obviously have to do is we have to accommodate this this squishing down at the bottom. Okay, so we can do that a couple ways. Easiest is to just go back into edit mode and draw mode, and then go to our move brush, and we can get rid of the pinky and really just unmask everything and start pulling our edges down. Because that's what happens when you rotate. Just look at your own fingers, you rotate it down. This whole pad gets pushed down. And actually I'm going to have rotation in this next finger that will create some of that drop that I just showed. Okay, so we can do that, and if I just make the pinky visible, we can do this, and then I can actually go into the pinky itself and adjust some of these edges. So the fat pad is going to be pushed up a little bit, kind of this first digit pad. And I'm just going to try to unbuckle some of these edges so this all flows correctly. It's important to keep rotating around your model when you're doing this because funny things can happen in different views when you're working with the fingers. The most common problem is to have your finger bend a funny axis, and this is actually okay. This is roughly how the pinky bends into the hand, not straight down, so we're okay. But oftentimes, if you're not careful with how you place your transpose joints, you get digits that just fly off to the side accidentally. You know, if I'm something other than perfectly orthogonal when I rotate this guy, meaning perfectly side on, I can introduce artifacts like this, right? So you can see that my finger is no longer straight. That is an easy thing to do, which is why I mentioned this, because I'm telling you from my own painful experience to be cognizant of it, because it takes a lot of correction once you start getting joints bent in funny directions. Okay, so that's the start of the transpose for this. I'll spare you the details of too much more, but what I will just do on screen for you right now is something that's going to be kind of important. And actually, while I'm here, I might as well just rotate this. Rotate the fourth finger. And I'm going to do it with a, like so. And then again, this is the same procedure that I did for the other one, but I just want to show you guys the an important point on rotating the, let's see, how far are we going to go with this? We're going to go to about 45, so a little bit less than that. And then probably just a tiny bit of rotation from here. And again, becoming quick with mask and invert mask is very important. So about half the rotation in this last segment to get my finger down. And let's just look at the axis and the alignment, and it looks like it's okay. Coming in towards the hand. Looks like we can believably bring our thumb across to touch it, which is important. It's something called opposition. You want your fingers to work well in opposition. I might need to actually rotate this a tiny bit. Actually, I'll just correct that with the edges on the knuckle. Okay, so now last thing in this little video, this little setup video, is the articulation of the fifth metacarpal, right? And this is how we're going to do it. Essentially, I want to, if everybody kind of bends your pinky forward, you can see that this last metacarpal actually has quite a bit of flexibility. Okay, so I'm just going to do a mask that ends up being something like this. Then I'll blur it a little bit. Be careful, it looks like the mask didn't go all the way down the fourth finger, so I'm going to again do a select add. So I'm hitting Alt as I drag this. And now my last digit is fairly free. It looks like my palm also needs an additional mask. So I'm going to add to this as well. So quite a bit of addition. But it's all okay, because now what we're going to do is we're going to line the bone with what would be kind of the base, roughly the base of the fifth metacarpal. And on the side view, roughly the rotation points. And again, just look at the mobility of your joint. It moves like this. right? So it really falls a good deal out of line with the other knuckles as the pinky finger rolls forward all the way, right? So that's just additional gesture for us to capture. And in fact, there's a little bit of the same in the fourth. So I'm just going to do these two together. And this is a crazy idea probably, but we'll see what happens. It's me adding all kinds of masks together. And a bit of a blur. And if you want to see what I'm talking about for mobility in the fourth, actually grab it yourself. Grab this knuckle right here and start to pull it back and forth. And you can see that it has a bit of motion that will drop it out of line with the other knuckles, right? And give you a good angle when viewed from the top, right? So this is what you want. You want to have some arch to your knuckles because they're not all perfectly flat in line. Okay, that's it. Obviously, there's a lot of repair work to be done on the base level to get the pads and the fat and the skin flowing the right direction. And then I have a little bit more formed and gesture to introduce to the first two fingers and the thumb. But in general, that is the approach for this exercise. I will time lapse a little bit of this, so and then annotate it, so you guys will get the abbreviated version. And then I'll go into more detail as we get it into higher resolution sculpting. Okay, I hope this gets you started.